And I think what We Live in Time does so well is that it takes the subject matter, like, yes, a character in this film is going to deal with having cancer and going through chemo and having to shave their head. But you're also telling the story about how they met and how they fell in love and how they break up and come back together again and have a family and move forward. And I think that's what's so powerful about this film. And just like you said, Shay, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh are two of our best that are working right now in the film world. They are so beautiful and powerful together in this film. And I think that's what makes We Live in Time so enchanting of a film. Hello and welcome to the movie podcast review of We Live in Time. My name is Daniel. I am one of your hosts, and joining me in time today is Shahbaz.
Hello.
And Anthony.
Hello.
We had the absolute pleasure of watching this film all the way back at TIFF 2024. And I say all the way back, even though it was only a month ago, it feels like forever ago that we watched this movie, and it's finally coming out. A lot has happened in the last month, so I just want to give a quick catch up because we've had our reviews, we've had lots of interviews, we've had lots of stuff come out. Shahbaz, how are you doing today?
You know, it's getting into that spooky season. We're getting into fall and it's cold out. So yesterday I kind of went out and just did some errands, and I was chilly and I didn't like it. So I'm kind of in that annoyed phase of weather right now. Other than that, I'm doing all right, I'd say.
That's good. Yeah, it's funny how like a month ago it was summer and it was TIFF, and always that week of TIFF is always like, this is the hottest it's ever been in the history of Toronto. And then here we are a month later and it's just like, it is cold and chilly and the sun is gone. But here we are. Anthony, how are you doing? It is the eve of your birth.
Yes, my birthday eve. I'm doing good. I'm living in time, as you know, no pun intended, as I say every year when it comes to my birthday. Just living in time. But yeah, I'm doing well.
That's good. That's great to hear. I think what I love so much about how this film is told, and we're going to get into it in our review, obviously, is that the timeline is non-linear. So you're getting a lot of glimpses into the world of this film. And I think it's that same way that we kind of look at our memories, and I really like that. And I know with both of you just celebrating birthdays, and obviously this being such a monumental year for the show and, you know, different events in our lives, Shay, with your wedding, like, it's just interesting that so many core memories that we've had were created this year. And it's all thanks to you watching this, you listening to this. So wherever you are in the world supporting the movie podcast, we are so grateful. If this is your first time finding us, or if this is your first time listening to one of our reviews or figuring out who we are, hello. It's so good for you to be here. We have lots of great discussions and interviews and reviews coming your way, already out. And I promise you, we will have a main episode soon, because I think that is truly where
Thank you.
We get to shine and show off our personalities and have fun. So we'll have one of those coming up very, very soon.
We received a lot of comments about that, and I'll be honest with you, we missed them too. If we could clone ourselves, we would have one clone just doing main episodes, I think.
Interesting.
And then one more clone editing.
Right.
And then one more clone to spend time with our loved ones.
Yeah. And then the real versions of us?
And then
where are they?
They all come to kill us, and then we all die.
That's,
I know. It's unfortunate. Infinity Pool.
That's the sequel to this film. Of course, the movie podcast is available on all podcast feeds and on YouTube. If you're seeing us right now on YouTube, please subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you think about this film. We're going to tell you what we think in just a moment. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, Letterboxd, wherever you are. The movie podcast is there. Let me tell you a little about We Live in Time. It is directed by John Crowley, who is going to be on the movie podcast this week as well. You'll be able to hear our interview with him from TIFF. It's truly a great one. You do not want to miss it. It was a really great conversation about the film. We stay spoiler free, so don't worry. Just like this review, if you want to go into this film knowing as little as possible, we're not going to talk about plot points really other than what is revealed in the trailer. But yeah, I definitely encourage you to check out that interview, because he talks all about working with Andrew Garfield, Florence Pugh. You know, a lot of great moments in this film we touch on, so you don't want to miss that. We Live in Time releases in Canada by Sphere Films on October 18th, and in the United States by A24. So go check it out in theaters. Shahbaz, please start us off. Give us your first reaction to We Live in Time.
We Live in Time is authentic storytelling. It is the kind of narrative structure that is very unique. It has characters that feel so beautiful and so true to life. And it has a director named John Crowley, who we've spoken about and who's going to be on our show, that's able to tug at your heartstrings. He's able to deliver this stunning film that really balances this tenderness of joy, but also this reality of life that we're kind of all going through. And because of the way that this movie is structured, you never know really what emotion exactly you're supposed to be feeling until really kind of like where the core essence of that scene comes in. So sometimes you're like, oh, is this going to be a really sad and devastating scene? Or is this a scene that I'm going to laugh really hard at? And I promise you, there are some extremely funny moments in this movie, you know, that bring some levity to all the intense situations that occur. And it all flows naturally. I think what I love so much about this movie is that you see yourselves in the characters, you see yourselves in these situations, because truly it can happen to anybody. And you understand a lot of the decisions that these characters make because they're real life decisions. And the way that the story is told, you know, non-linearly, where we're going back and forth at different eras, they all encompass and kind of funnel in together to tell this really cohesive story. It's not a different movie if you were to, place it linearly, but it would evoke different emotions out of you. And I think that's what's so important about how this movie is structured. It has phenomenal performances as well. I mean, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh are the best right now that are working. We love everything that they do. And they continue to prove that case in this movie. They have amazing chemistry. You root for them. You love them. You feel each of their pain. But what I love so much about this movie is that it never crossed a line, at least for me, where it devastated me. It made me really sad at certain points, but I never got to the point of like, I can never watch this again. In fact, We Live in Time is a movie that I'm excited to watch again when it, is out in theaters for everybody else to see, because there's so much beauty to this movie and there's just such a warmth to it that during the fall season especially, it's going to hold you like a blanket.
I love that you just mentioned it's like, especially in the fall season, because this feels like such a cozy fall movie, even though it is a film that is dealing with cancer. And how do you tell a story? How do you, tell a movie and still be funny and deal with cancer? And, I could point to a million examples of films that have a storyline that has to deal with cancer that feels like it's like, oh, that's not funny, or that's in poor taste. And I think what We Live in Time does so well is that it takes the subject matter, like, yes, a character in this film is going to deal with having cancer and going through chemo and having to shave their head. But you're also telling the story about how they met and how they fell in love and how they break up and come back together again and have a family and move forward. And I think that's what's so powerful about this film. And just like you said, Shay, Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh are two of our best that are working right now in the film world. They are so beautiful and powerful together in this film. And I think that's what makes We Live in Time so enchanting of a film. But Anthony, please jump on in. Give us your thoughts on We Live in Time.
I'm not one for movies that really work on you when it comes to emotions. Those movies don't really, I hate them. I don't connect with them. It's not that I don't connect with them. I just don't want to face them. Those are those movies that just make you, did you cry in this movie? Did this make you laugh? Those things, I hate them because I just don't want to go into that world. But with this film, I had no choice because you guys were watching it and I'm like, oh, fine, I'll have to watch it with you guys. And it's like, damn, this movie makes me so emotional because it's so sad. And if you've had a family member or friend member go through cancer, you're going to feel it. You're going to know what they've gone through. You're going to know what it's like to be a person who loves someone who, they're sick and you can't do much other than like take care of them, and just that relationship and the bond that even forms when you have someone who you love in illness. And this movie it's a beautiful film. Like you have these two interesting characters who meet in an interesting way and they fall in love, and it's like, yeah, this is what kind of love is. It's not like how we experience love now in the modern times. It's such an old-fashioned type of connection, and it's nice to see on the big screen. But I think, Shay said it's Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield who just have this chemistry that's so believable that you're just like, man, I are they really married, or is this a real relationship that I'm experiencing? Because it's so genuine, it's so authentic, it's earnest. It feels like, yeah, that's what I would love my relationship to be if I had it. There's no pettiness, there's no immaturity. It's just, well, there is immaturity, but like this, there's a friendship there, and I really love that about these two characters. The story is, like if you've watched any movie that deals with terminal illness, it's like, the fault in our stars, and it's just like, oh, I hate these types of stories because you just feel so sad.
Yeah, but I don't think it gets to like the torture porn as like those
like
movies.
Our Friend. Like, do you remember Our Friend?
Yeah, like Our Friend.
That
Dakota
devastating.
Johnson, Jason Segel. Like those ones are like, oh, here's like a devastating moment, and then a piano falls on everybody.
Here's your artery. I'm going to rip it open.
Yeah, it's just. Yeah. But I totally get it though, because I think the other side of this film is what balances it out, where it's not just devastating the whole time, even though you know where it's going. But it is. You're not wrong, Anthony. It is still hard to watch where you know where things are ultimately going when people, are facing this in the stages and the situations that she's in this, right?
Yeah, and that's how I felt. I just felt like those movies which I've seen, like A Walk to Remember, is just like, I don't want to face these facts, But I do love the storytelling. I do love the Nolan-esque, the non-linear. We're going to start with, the ending, or maybe the middle and go to the beginning and go to the ending. And you're just creating these things, because that's how I think a lot of times, of non-linear way, when I think of memories or things that are happening, or even my day-to-day. Like I'm like thinking of 2 weeks from now when I should be thinking of what to do today. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was a really well-made movie. It's not a movie that's breaking any ground. It's just a very authentic, genuine film. It's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to watch these performances. And I'm one of those people that, when you see something like this, you do want to share with friends and family, and you do want to say, hey, this is that movie to go watch in the theaters. So I do think that's one of those movies that I'll probably be recommending.
I love that you said that, Anthony, because I feel the exact same way as you. Like this feels like that type of movie that when people are asking, hey, what movie should I go to the theaters to watch? It's this film, because I think as fun as it is to go watch a movie that has, a movie like Twisters, which is all something that we're like, yeah, like big screen, go watch it, have fun. It's also nice to go to the movie to experience stories like this. And I love that a movie like this could still come to theaters, because for a lot of the time, the last 10 years, you look at a lot of the films that have been releasing that are romantic comedies or romantic dramas, they'd go right to streaming services. And yes, they'll find an audience there, but I was so transported while watching this film. I was so just in time with Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh watching this movie. It just totally took me away, and it truly is enchanting that way when a movie can do that. And it reminded me a lot, Anthony. You mentioned old fashioned. This reminded me like a movie that would have come out in the 90s. Like, and I dig that a lot. I like that this feels like, even though it's set in modern day, the technology in the film isn't so dependent on, how we use technology today. It's like, yeah, people are getting text messages, but it's not the crux of the film. It's not how, these characters are meeting. It just feels very old fashioned in a sense of their meet cute is, that moment you see in the trailer where, she hits him with her car and then they meet in the hospital. And it's such like a fun, light moments. And you just really fall in love with these characters. You truly fall in love with who Florence Pugh and Andrew Garfield are. You believe that they are these characters, and you see why they are some of the best working today. Like Shay said, like it is such a damn, moving film. And I think, again, it is hard to tell a story about cancer, like we were mentioning earlier, and not have it feel like contrived or just like forcing you to feel a certain way. And also, like Shay mentioned, like I'm glad that it didn't go to places that's, it felt like, oh man, I never want to watch this movie again. Because I'll be honest with you, this is a movie that I've been really wanting to rewatch. And I rewatch and watch with somebody, watch with my girlfriend and experience that. Because it is a movie that you just can't help but fall in love with. One of the things I remember us talking about as well too when we left the theater was how, her like the families are introduced in this, and I feel like we were talking about how like, oh, like there's things introduced in this film about like Florence Pugh's past, about like, oh, she used to do this and she was also part of this, and it's so funny how like I was thinking about that, and I'm like, yeah, in a 2-hour film, when you're introducing so much and you're like, oh, this person also used to do this, it's funny because you're like, oh, that kind of feels like not out of left field, but it's like, oh, this is like new information that I wasn't expecting us to get right now. But it also kind of reminded me of how we are in our own lives. Like, we're not the same people that we were 3 years ago, 10 years ago, before we all knew each other. We were all very different people. So I totally understand where the movie's coming from, where it's introducing these other elements of people's past, but also, again, in that 2-hour time, sometimes when those moments are introduced, it could feel like, oh, okay, this is a side of someone that I didn't know was there, and then it kind of ties into moments that are towards the later end of the film. So sometimes that way it could feel like, okay, we're just kind of having a new element for the sake of having these moments at the end. But what I think John Crowley does so well is that he makes these characters human, he makes them believable. And one of my favorite films from, oh my god, almost 10 years ago now, Brooklyn, with Saoirse Ronan, was, I think, such a wonderful work that he did. And I think he did, was it The Goldfinch after that, correct? Which wasn't one that I really loved, but this feels very much more in line with what Brooklyn was. So if you're a big fan of the film Brooklyn, I think you're going to find a lot to love in We Live in Time as well.
I have to say that Andrew Garfield probably plays the best tortured soul in cinema. Just like whenever I see that man, and just the things that he's experienced with Spider-Man and all the Social Network, he's always being tortured.
Yeah.
Silent. He's always being tortured emotionally, and you really see it in this film.
Let him have a happy life for once in one of these movies.
Bubbly eyes.
Just let him win the lottery, or like just let him have a good time in a movie for once. Can we just get that? Can someone in Hollywood, if you're listening, just write a part for Andrew Garfield where he is happy throughout the entire film?
And John Crowley did it again to him in Boy A, which was their original film they worked at. Tortured him in that too. I will say though, like I was expecting the horse that we've been seeing from the trailer, the poster, now to merch from A24 to have a bigger presence. But I'll be honest, it's literally just there's no money shot of the horse.
It's
in this
blink
film.
and you miss.
Yeah, it's just like, oh, there it is. And it's gone.
I think it was still there, and they were like, we got to cut it out because then the horse is going to take over this movie, and that's not the point.
Yeah,
I think that's what happened in the editing bay as the trailer came out. They're probably like, yeah, let's trim this scene a bit.
Let's cut out the horse just a little bit. So let's Godfather it right now. Let's get rid of this horse. Let's get to our final recommendations for We Live in Time. Shahbaz, I want to get you to start us off.
We Live in Time is a must-watch. You need to go see this movie in theaters. Go see it with a loved one if you can. It is beautiful. It'll evoke a lot of fantastic emotions out of you, and I think at the end of the day, you're going to fall in love with these characters, but you're going to fall in love with the simplicity of their story, and it's because of that authenticness that they're able to portray. You feel comfortable watching a movie like this, and especially during the fall season, it's one that I highly recommend.
I'm right there with you. I think We Live in Time is absolutely sublime. Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh are just so enchanting together. And when I look at this film, I get all like warm and fuzzy, even though it is going to break my heart while watching. But I think some of the best movies do that. I think it's really special. It's definitely one that you should go to the theater and watch this year. Anthony, take us on home.
We Live in Time is a beautiful love story that you should watch on the big screen. I think just for the performances of Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh, something that's I think will be talked about when it comes to downright great performances and chemistry on screen. People are going to be like, yeah, they're going to want that type of, not this type of relationship, but this type of love and this classic look at love.
Yeah, it really is. It really is like an old-fashioned film in that regard. We Live in Time releases in theaters on October 18th. Do not forget to check out our interview with the director John Crowley this week on the Movie Podcast feed and on YouTube. And if you like what we're doing here, consider subscribing. Join us on Discord. Follow us on socials. Everything you need to know is in the show notes below. Lots more fun to come here on the Movie Podcast. And we're so glad that you're here. Thank you again. If this is your first time watching, we're so grateful that you're here with us today. That was This Time with the Movie Podcast, and we'll see you next.